Hi, my name is Beth, and welcome to my April Reading Journal wrap-up. My April flew by so fast because I was so busy this month. A lot of things happened, and I was super preoccupied all month long. I was finishing up the second semester of my MA program, so I was planning and writing my finals. I also had to write my research project proposal, which required a lot of reading and thinking. And I also had my 25th birthday in April, which was nice, but very uneventful. I was so busy that I didn't really have time to celebrate. I spent the entire day not doing anything because I was just too busy. But it was nice to just relax for a bit. I'm definitely feeling some academic burnout at this point. One of my brothers asked if there were any books I wanted for my birthday, and I just had to tell him no because even though I still love reading, the last thing I want right now is new books. I barely have time to read the books I already own, let alone new ones. But this month I really noticed that my effort interest has really dropped. I think it's a combination of the intensity of the MA program, as well as the 8 consecutive years of post-secondary education that I've been in. I still have 1 semester left of school, but half of it is my final research project, so hopefully that goes smoothly. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the end of this program. I think it'll be nice to take a break. I'm planning on doing some traveling when I finish as a reward. I haven't decided where I want to go yet, but I have a few places on the roster, so it's like I have a nice little incentive to get through this program, and I'll take whatever I can get. But going back to my reading this month, I ended up reading 3 books, and for the first time this year, they were all books I chose to read myself. None of them were school-related, and there's a pretty good selection. I finished a series, I read a book that's been sitting on my shelves for a while, and I did a reread, so I'm satisfied with that. I'm decorating my cover page with a pink spring sticker sheet from Artimation Co. I've used a quote from Frankenstein on the left side, which is, "It was a most beautiful season. Never did the fields bestow a more plentiful harvest," which I feel is very fitting for April, but maybe I'm biased. I mentioned in my January wrap-up that I didn't love the square labels I used on the right side of that cover page because they didn't match the cream-colored paper that I used for my quotes. So I wanted to have a stamp that I could use to create similar-looking labels, but on the same paper, and I managed to do so with the help of today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online community for creatives. They have thousands of unique classes to help you elevate your work, hobbies, or side hustles to the next level. Whether you're looking to improve your illustrations, writing, marketing, or more, Skillshare's classes are led by expert-level creators for creatives. If you're like me and are interested in making your own stamps, I would definitely recommend Melissa Lee's class, Create a Hand-Carved Stamp from Scratch, Tools and Best Practices. She walks you through all the materials you might need, the types of carvings you'll get from the different blades, and general advice on how to apply and carve your designs. Carving the rubber is surprisingly challenging, but I found her advice on blade pressure to be especially helpful for creating successful lines. I ended up creating a simple square border to act as a book label. I thought this design would be easy because it's just a rectangle, but it was challenging and definitely took a few practice attempts. If you're interested in taking Melissa's class or any of the classes available, the first 500 people to use the link in my description box will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you once again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. I also ended up using a variety of different pink papers for this collage. Baby, stop eating your food. I'm trying to record. As well as washi tape from Hobby Lobby. But now that the cover page is complete, we can get started on the book spreads. The first book I read in April was The Winners by Fredrik Backman. This is the third and final book in the Beartown trilogy, which I started last year. Beartown was actually my favorite book of 2024, and I was so excited to finally get to this book so I could finish off the series. Obviously, The Winners is the last book in a trilogy, so I'm going to do my best to not spoil anything from the previous books, but this book follows all the familiar faces of Beartown as they gather together following yet another town tragedy. All the Beartown residents are struggling to find their footing in an ever-changing environment, especially since the rivalry between Beartown and the neighboring town Hed seems stronger than ever. Some characters are trying to do their best to progress in the world of hockey, and others are still struggling with the horrors of their pasts. Ultimately, everything comes to an end, with some characters learning from their experiences and others not making it out of Beartown at all. It's a little hard to talk about this book because it's the last one in a series, but overall, I really enjoyed it. But I really liked some of the storylines in this particular book. Maya is struggling with wanting to move away for school, but recognizing that her whole life is grounded in Beartown. Obviously, her situation is quite extreme considering her assault in book 1, but I feel like Backman did a great job at capturing that weird spot between teenage life and adulthood. It's a difficult spot to be in, but her story is handled really well in my opinion. I also enjoyed Amit's efforts to be drafted into the NHL. So far, he's only really been presented as a character who always has his head on his shoulders, so it was nice to see him have the opportunity to really weigh where his priorities are and what he wants in life. Of all the books in this series, I would say that this one was probably my least favorite. The one major thing that I really didn't like about this book was some of the dialogue. I don't remember if it was like this in the other 2 books, but I found some of the exchanges to just be really cringy. Anna was one of the characters whose dialogue was weird, but she's kind of a weird character, so I'm willing to excuse that a bit. But Benji and Maya had some really cringy dialogue, and it just didn't really feel like them. Also, Backman kept using the phrase, "got the dog in him." I can't even say it. No, I can't say it. It's so stupid. Backman kept using the phrase, "got the dog in him," to describe passionate hockey players. It feels like a phrase his kid taught him, and then he just thought it was a fun, new, hip thing that the kids were saying and decided to put it in his book. But it feels so weird and out of place. It sounds like a bad attempt at trying to be relevant to younger audiences, and it sounds so awkward and doesn't really work. I don't cry very much while reading. I can name probably less than 10 books that have ever made me cry in my life, but I can say that Fredrik Backman has written 2 of those books, and at the end of this book, I was just straight up crying. It sucked, but not necessarily in a bad way. I used a Celestial Witch sticker sheet from Starjoy Studios to decorate this spread. I don't go out of my way to try and match my spreads to the books I read because then I have more flexibility with the stationery I buy. If I already have something that will work, I'll use it, but in this case, I didn't have anything hockey related, so I went for a blue space witch theme. I also used washi tapes from Notebook Therapy's Gentle Giant collection and IEB's Magic Wonder set. You can use my discount code GUESS20 to get 20% off your order from IEB, and I'll receive a small commission. Generally speaking, I'm not super happy with how this spread came out, but they can't all be winners. Haha, pun intended. Overall, I had a great time with this book, despite some of the characters having the dog in them. I ended up giving The Winners 4.5 stars. Backman has another book coming out later this month, and I'm very excited to get around to that one. Oh my god. like not okay. Yeah, so the TLDR is that I've been destroyed. The next book I read was A Psalm for the Wild-Built by Becky Chambers. My primary reading goal for 2025 is to read more science fiction, and even though I technically read a sci-fi last month, it was a reread, so this book feels like the official start to that journey. This book follows a non-binary character named Sibling Dex, who abruptly leaves their monastery to begin life as a tea monk. Their job is to listen to people's problems and assign them a tea to make them feel better. However, being a tea monk is more complicated than Sibling Dex anticipated, and as a result, they end up questioning their life choices and are conflicted over what their purpose in life is. Sibling Dex's struggles come to a halt when they meet a robot named Mosscap, the first robot that any human has seen in years. Centuries before, the robots gained agency and decided to leave humans behind in exchange for their own freedom, and they haven't been seen since. However, Mosscap is on its own journey to discover what humans need, and Sibling Dex realizes that their problems may be more circumstantial than they believed. The main reason I'm trying to read more sci-fi this year is because I'm not super well versed in the genre. I don't really know what I want out of my sci-fi yet. From the limited books I have read and my interests in fantasy, I think that I want a political sci-fi with a lot of social conflict. While A Psalm for the Wild-Built is certainly political, I didn't realize that it was a book that could be easily classified as a cozy sci-fi going in. I've never read a cozy fantasy to my knowledge, but honestly, it's not a subgenre that I gravitate towards. Maybe I'm not giving the genre enough credit, but my understanding of it is that it won't have those political social conflicts that I'm looking for. Because there's the pre-existing divide between humans and robots, there is definitely political conversation happening, but the stakes are extremely low. Sibling Dex's conflict about being a tea monk doesn't feel very strong because the consequences don't feel very strong. Nothing inherently bad will happen to them if they change their mind. And Mosscap isn't allowed to return to the other robots until it finds out what humans need, but again, there's no time limit or consequences for not finding the answer. This is the second novella that I've read this year, the other one being Galatea by Madeline Miller, and I have a similar critique for this book that I had for that one, and it's that I wish this book had been a little bit longer. I mentioned this before, but I'm aware that this complaint isn't entirely fair because they're novellas and they're meant to be short. But I feel like the shortness of this book didn't allow for proper character development for Sibling Dex. In chapter 1, they're struggling to be a tea monk and they feel like they've made the wrong profession choice. But at the beginning of chapter 2, they're regarded as the greatest tea monk in the whole continent. I almost wish that the entire first chapter didn't exist because I feel like we lost a lot of information between the missing years between chapters, showing their process of becoming successful. Or at the very least, I didn't think the first chapter needed to be as long as it was. I think a lot of it probably could have just been summarized. I also had some issues with Mosscap, although not as many. My biggest observation was that it didn't really feel like a robot to me. I understand that this might be the point, but Mosscap resembled a human being more than I was anticipating. It could also come down to me not knowing many literary robots, so it could be a me issue, but I just thought that Mosscap was too similar to Dex in their behavior and mannerisms. I used a retro sticker book from Hobby Lobby to decorate these pages. My mom bought the sticker book for me when she was in the States a few months ago, and a friend of mine bought me some scrapbook paper from Michael's that matched perfectly, so I knew I had to use them together. I also used an orange gingham washi tape, which was from Ikigai Papier. I certainly didn't hate this book though. I thought the writing was good and the humor worked quite well. I don't think I'll continue this series, but I will probably pick up something different from Becky Chambers in the future. I gave A Psalm for the Wild-Built 3 stars. I don't know if cozy sci-fi is for me, but at the very least, I gave it a shot. The last book I read in April was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I've mentioned this before, but The Raven Cycle is my favorite series of all time. It's really bizarre because it represents a lot of things that I don't typically read anymore, like YA and magical realism, but for some reason, these books just do it for me. After I finished my last final paper, I just wanted to read something that I knew I would love, and I figured that with the graphic novel adaptation coming out in a few months, April was a great time to reread it. The Raven Boys follows a group of high school boys on their journey to find a dead Welsh king. It's said that whoever wakes the king will be granted a favor, and each of the teenagers is embarking on this journey for different reasons because they all want different things from the favor. However, the quest takes an interesting detour when Blue Sargent, the daughter of a family of psychics, sees the spirit of one of the boys, Gansey, on the night of a death ritual. Seeing his spirit means that she will either fall in love with him or she will kill him. This becomes more complicated with Blue's own prophecy that she will kill her true love when she kisses him. Her life becomes entangled with the boy's adventure, and what seems like a simple quest becomes much bigger than any of them expected. Like I said, this is the first book in my favorite series, so I'm definitely a little biased when it comes to reviewing it. However, I would say that The Raven Boys is my least favorite in the series, but not because it's an inherently bad book. I mostly have issues with some of the language. Maggie Stiefvater uses uncommon words like discomfiting many times in this book, so it's hard not to notice every single time she uses it. Also, I don't know if it's the edition of the book that I have, but there are some sentences that just don't read right. It feels like there are grammatical errors in them, so they sound weird. But in terms of the plot structure, I actually think this one is the strongest in the series. I've mentioned this before, but a repeated problem that I have with series is that authors will have a big overarching story that they're trying to accomplish over numerous books, but they don't have individual conflicts for each book in the series. This was a problem I had with the Atlas 6, for example, where the ending didn't feel satisfying because it didn't have any concrete conclusion. I don't have that problem with this series, and I think this first book does it best. There's a very clear series goal, which is find Glendower and get the favor, but the individual goal of this first book is to wake the ley lines, invisible beams of magic energy that will help locate where Glendower is. It's really strong, and every chapter clearly works towards this goal, either very explicitly, like discovering the magical forest of Cabeswater, or less subtly, like establishing social conflict between Gansey and one of the other boys, Adam, who's my favorite character, by the way. I love Adam. I used a Mushroom Girl sticker sheet from Rabbit Draw on Etsy for this spread. I paired it with some old book paper and some washi tapes from Hobby Lobby and my local dollar store. I also tried to match the font of the title on the book cover. It didn't turn out perfectly, but I'm happy enough with how it looks. Something that I really took time to focus on during this reread was the primary antagonist, Welk. Each book has a new antagonist, and Welk is the first of numerous evil Latin teachers. Something that I didn't quite realize the previous times I read this book was how similar Welk is to Gansey. They both come from wealthy families, they both attend Aglionby Academy, they both have a rich friend who owns an expensive car, and they both have an interest in the ley lines. But Gansey represents everything Welk could have been had he just shown a bit more love in his life. The love Gansey feels for Adam and Ronan separates him from Welk because Welk doesn't love anyone in his life. His obsession is fueled by greed rather than curiosity and passion. This distinction really does a lot to highlight Gansey's character in his favor. At the end of the day, I really like this first book. I think it does a great job at setting things up for future books, and I'm definitely looking forward to my reread continuing. I gave The Raven Boys 4.5 stars. I have another semester of school coming up, but I'm gonna try to sneak the next few books in. And that is it for my April wrap-up. I honestly didn't think I would be able to get even 3 books in this month, but I'm very happy that I was able to pull it off. Did I maybe sacrifice some of my work time with reading? Maybe, but everything got finished in the end, so it's fine. Like I said, I do still have one more semester of school left, and the first 6 weeks are going to be pretty extensive, so I'll do my best to squeeze some books in. I'd love to know what you are all reading at the moment, and if you have any sci-fi recommendations, please let me know. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.